Hello and welcome. I'm Fuzzy Logic and I'm playing Solve here, and I am going to give you my thoughts and review of the Dead Nations. Dead Nations are very interesting army. Got three commanders, and they don't obey the rules of leadership like anyone else, so a different one to all the others. I am very interested in the Dead Nations as an army. They are quite tanky and they hold and stand and fight to the last with most of their units. And they recently got a buff, and I think they can be a very potent army. So let's get going into them. So, commanders. We have three here. We have a pure fighty commander, a hybrid mage and fighter in the vampire, and the necromancer is the mage option. So let's start with the White Lord, a very defensive commander. Usually I will run him with Great Weapon because defense 6 on a piece that usually doesn't even use their defense skill because commanders don't get hit individually unless they're in a duel is excessive. 5 is usually good enough. So I would definitely take the Great Weapon. Skill 4, Power 5 with Great Weapon, 6 on charge, Defense 5, 3 attacks, 3 wounds, 10 Discipline. Discipline is not important for this for the undead units in this army. So let's see. He has Reanimate, which all the undead things do, and it means when they lose combat, it doesn't matter by how much, they will not flee, but they will lose D3 wounds instead. But I also suffer -1 move, which can lead to a very slow army. They've recently got a buff though, which means that they can compete in the movement game, which is good. I think they've done well in making them better, but I don't think they are broken. So Terror is his command ability, one off, -3 discipline to a unit, which is an interesting one. It's the problem is you've got to know you've got to win, and that's down to dice, and that is very risky. So you can throw it on. Sometimes you're not doing anything else with him, so like you can give it a crack, and sometimes it will make the difference. And so it's a bit meh, but sometimes useful ability. And then you have Unholy Vigor. Increase your movement of any reanimated unit by 3. So this allows them to play the movement game, which I think is great. They needed something because they were very slow and easily outmaneuvered or not even fought against. So I really like this addition. I don't think it's broken them. So no special mounts. I don't think any of them have any special mounts. So then we go to the Vampire Lord. Now the Vampire Lord is a hybrid fighter and spellcaster. Um, Great weapon or hand weapon, shoot again, probably great weapon. Again, 5 defense enough, more power, especially on a high skill attack person. So skill 5, power 5, defense 5, 3 attacks, 3 wounds, 9 discipline. Nice. Great weapon, heavy armor for -1 move, but Shadow. Well, so now let's look at the spell. So Unholy Vigor, all of them have this, which is great. Nice little ability to get them into the fight faster and get them onto objectives and stuff, and be able to compete in the movement game. So limited spells. Shadow Bolts. You can run Shadow Bolts. I think you need to run it with the abilities Cruelty, which will make the opposition re-roll their saves if you are shooting at them with it, and it still works in combat. So I think that can work as a combination. Personally, I like the Hex. Well, these are all viable. So reanimate, you can put back on wounds to damaged units. So they have to have taken the wounds first, but you can put on some really high value wounds. So that can be really good. And Hex can be extremely good, especially with high volumes of low quality attacks, which you can get in this army. So a good set of spells and a pretty good stat line. The only thing about her is she can become very expensive. Because say you are running Hex, Reanimate, you want uh, good output from her, so you put True Strike on, and it's like 135 points, so very expensive if you tool her up a bit. Um, but a good commander nevertheless. Then we got the Necromancer. Necromancer, I mean, hand weapon, uh, so a little bit more offensive on the charge, but skill 3, power 3, defense 4, 2 attacks, 3 wounds, 8 discipline. A relatively meh spellcaster, but she's it's not what she's built for. She's not built for the fight. So spells, she's got the same as the other, except she's also got Raise Dead, which is put on D3 plus 3 zombies, skeleton warriors, spears, or archers, which can grow your skeleton spears or archers, or um, put on a good amount of value of unit, making them that much harder to grind through and stay that much longer in the fight, which I do like. So she's a quite good caster. Uh, Again, comes with Unholy Vigor. The only thing about that is if you do take 2 spells on her, say Raise Dead and Hex, suddenly you've got so much things you want to do with her, and she can only do one of them a turn. Um, but still a very very good unit. So onto the battle line. So we have skeleton warriors. Here we have, yeah, in general we've got cheap but lots. So skeleton warriors and skeleton spears are the same price. The only difference is their weapon. Um, Hand weapon shield or spear, so attacking extra rank when not charging, or +1 strength when you are charging. Um, Pick your poison depending how you want to use them. I like the spears because like to roll with big units of them. Skill 2, the lowest skill army in the game, probably this I think. Skill 2, but power 3, defense 3, 1 attack, 1 wound. Yeah, they are slower because of the reanimate, but yeah, they can wander on and they won't run away. And I like the spears for long, drawn out combats. Hopefully, you if well, you're always hitting on 4s, pretty much. I can't think of anything that's defense 1. Um, and power 3 is fine, so you just get lots and lots of bodies. And at 5 points a body, it's not a bad price at all for these 2 units. So next we have zombies. Now the cheapest of the lot, 4 points a model. You do lose a point of power for that. So skill 2, power 2, defense 2, defense 3, 1 attack, 1 wound, and unarmed. So just no extra weapons. Reanimated for slower, but not running away. It's a tar pit. It will wander up. It will stand in front of something. It will fight. Maybe plink off a few wounds if it's like feels like a good day, and it will last a certain amount of time. Don't put them as the backbone of your army. They probably won't do it, but as something to hold something up or sit on an objective and get in people's way, not a bad unit. And then we have the White Guard, the elite infantry of the undead. So you can run them with hammer shield or great weapon. Uh, but yeah, it's a bit of a choice. That heavy armor makes them even slower. So combos with reanimate makes them very slow. Um, and you can either have the more defense or the more offense version. So we start with skill 4, which is nice, powerful, very nice base. Can be 5 or 6 with the great weapons. Defense 4 base can be 5 with the shield. 1 attack, 1 wound, 10 discipline. Solid unit, 10 points a model. Not the cheapest, but very solid. Yeah, these are the kind of units you want to target with reanimate. So you putting these guys back on, it's suddenly very good value for money. Okay, so on to the range support. We have the catapult. The so strength 3, power 3, but we don't really care about the stat line. It is a range 48, 2d3 hits, power 5 catapult. Protected crew to keep it from being shot too much. It can move, but it can move or shoot, and it doesn't run away. So sometimes it can hold a charge from something, and occasionally it will turn up and hold when it shouldn't, and pin something down for longer. So that's a nice little bonus for this particular catapult, and it does decent range damage. I do like the catapult a fair amount. Then onto the bowmen. Bowmen, I mean, they are, I think, the only skill 2 ranged unit in the game. They are not good shooters. They are cheap. That is their only upside. They're still power 3, defense 2, so they die very badly to range and combat. 1 attack, 1 wound. So generally, not that big a fan of this unit. The only way to do it, I think, is you run a big blob of them. You maybe put some more on with your necromancer, and you try and throw many arrows down range. Some of them will hurt people. You got decent range at range 30, but yeah, I think a struggle to justify this unit, especially with the lower defense. If it had defense 3, maybe they'd be okay. But yeah, they're just too vulnerable to too many things, and they don't do enough damage. But they are cheap for a ranged unit. Now onto the fast attack. There's quite a few options here as well. So the direwolves, just the same as the hounds for other armies. So an excellent grenade unit. 3 skill, 4 power, 3 defense, 2 attacks each, 1 wound, 7 discipline. So these are one of the units that can run away in the army. Fangs, +1 power on the charge. They will hold down a flank, they can threaten things, go kill war machines, hurt stuff on the charge. That's what they do best. They will die to light shooting, so try and avoid it. Try and not get them shot too much before you get them into combat, but you know, sometimes not so easy to do. Fellbats, similar deal. They are the flying version, but they're a bit weaker. So you add maneuverability in the flying, but you get 1 less power, 1 less attack than the dogs. But you do get an extra wound in the unit, so 6 total. But yeah, so I am not such a big fan of bats. They're alright. Personally I think with their so few, so weak attacks, I see them fluff all their attacks far too much and not do the job I need them to do, like take out a war machine or something like that. And instead, you lose combat to a war machine and then you run away. So I think not my favourite unit, but I mean decent flyer to run around and be annoying in flanks. Then we have the 2 knight units, the skeleton knights. It's their more standard knights. You can pop a lance and shield for 2 more, so these are 20 points a model, or 22 with this. Heavy armor, so they are a slower knight unit, but skill 3, power 3, defense 5, always, and 2 attacks, 2 wounds. They're alright. They aren't the best, I don't think. The they have a bit of speed, but they're vulnerable to lethal strike. They still die plenty with defense 5, and they don't have a huge amount of attacks, and if you lose combat, they're relatively painful to crumble with. So I am not the biggest fan of this unit, personally. And then we're on to Dread Knights, the very expensive unit of the cavalry side, and they are a very good unit. I think in my opinion, you don't run them with great weapons. You run them with lance and shield. This makes them defense 6. Defense 6 is a very nice break point. If you're fighting someone strength 3, you're saving on 2 ups. Suddenly, like, often you can just grind someone down if your save is good enough. You just sit there and you say, alright, you've got more attacks than me, but I'm skill 4, so you're not probably hitting me that well. Power 4, so I'm hurting you. Um, with my attacks, but you're not hurting me with my defense 6. 2 attacks each, 2 wounds each. It's fine. They do struggle a little bit on the damage output, but they are very defensive as a unit, and I like the Dread Knights. Um, but we'll get to how I build them in a bit. And then finally we have one abomination, which is the Zombie Giant, which is an interesting piece. Personally, I don't like him. Some people do, and I think if you're running him, I think you have to run reanimate to put wounds back on him because he's quite a swingy piece. So let's go through him. Skill 2, lowest in the game. Power 6, defense 6, 4 attacks, 8 wounds, 10 discipline. So he's got reanimate. So again, won't run, but does crumble. And putrid stench. So opponents reroll hits on him in close combat, which can make him extremely hard to hurt, but works a bit against the old skill too, because people are hitting him on 3s 9 times out of 10, but they re-roll them. So that means what? Yeah, they hit just under half, I think, of their attacks. And he's defense 6, so he does have a good defensive stat line for doing good saves. But yeah, he is a bit with 4 attacks at power 6 and skill 2. He's hitting on 4s, so he should hit 2 at strength 6. So he doesn't do a lot of damage, but he does a little bit consistently. My issue with him is that I think he's just vulnerable to swings against you. So on that one combat where the opponent hits quite well and he takes a couple of wounds, he only hits once out of his 4 attacks. You lose combat and then you crumble D3, and say you take 2 wounds in the combat and then you crumble and you roll bad on a 3, suddenly over half the his wounds are gone. That was a really bad round of combat, and against someone who has high quality attacks coming in, they can one shot this guy. They can do 4 4 wounds, 5 yeah, well, yeah, or do so much damage that he will die over the next couple of rounds. So I don't rate this guy, but I think with reanimate he can work. So there you go. There's the list. There is the people. So let's have a look at a couple of my lists. So this is the Necromancer list, which is purely based on a lot of bodies. So 2 skeleton spear blocks. I will be using Raised Dead to add D3 plus 3 to these units when they're in the fight. I'll be using Unholy Vigor to start with to try and move them up, get them into their fights that I want, and Hex of Ruin to make their fights better. So when they are in, their power 3 isn't great, but suddenly with Hex of Ruin, that's plenty good enough. The issue with the list is, one, the Necromancer is vulnerable. If an enemy commander comes in and smacks her, she'll die. So you need to look after her, and that's why I put her in zombies. She's built to hide at the back, not to fight at the front. And 2 is there's too many spells. I mean, you can do it, and you have to carefully think of which one you want to use every combat and every turn. But it's a lot of spells, and you can only cast 1 a turn. And the dogs, yeah, good grenade units, run down the sides, protect your flanks, and generally hurt things on the charge. So yeah, I quite like this army. Um, you can probably replace one of these dog units with the catapult if you want to do a ranged option and then um, sit back a bit more, which I think is probably a very valid option as well. So now the vampire option. This is a bit more interesting. I used to run this slightly differently, but the price of Hex Ruin went up and meant I had to swap this skeleton into this skeleton unit instead of I had two zombie units, which I preferred. But yes, so this Dreadnought unit has to do more or less everything in this army. This vampire is 155 points. The Dreadnought's 128. This is over half the army in this unit. Um, she is pretty. She's the consistent damage output. She has unnatural power, true strike, so she's rerolling to hit at strength 6 or 7 on the charge, and it's very very tanky. Can fight most duels. Um, And then she's got her spells, which reanimate to put D3 plus 3 wounds, or pretty much only uses on the Dreadnoughts, unless the skeletons are in a particular important combat. Hex Ruin is very useful on the skeletons to make their combats suddenly quite good. Um, the And can be useful in later turns after the charge, because these knights are lance and shield, very good on the charge, strength 6, but strength 4 afterwards can really do with the hex, and then vigor early on keeps the skeletons up with the rest of the army, or extends the knight's charge range. I might drop a natural power on this army to get back my 2 units of zombies. Uh, that's a temptation, because the zombies and the skeletons are there to try and protect the knights while they do their job of grinding, killing whatever's in front of them, and turning around and hopefully working on the rest of their army and not dying in the process. So that's how this list is built to work. Again, direwolves just protect the flanks and hurt things on the charge. And finally, the White Lord, the hardest one to run, I think, as a hero. He is the budget option. So what I've tried to do here is just run volumes of whites. He's still got the unholy vigor. The whites' biggest weakness is their speed. So you suddenly have countered that weakness with your commander. So that is he doesn't do badly. The His output is not bad as well, with strength 5 or 6. 2 direwolves completing the same job as usual, defend the flanks, do damage stuff on the charge. Another Earth Catapult, just to give a bit of range pressure. It's still not the fastest army with these whites. You want to go sit on any objective and try and engineer fights in the middle and use the catapult just to work on people, hurt the things that are of high value and might threaten you, and hopefully provide the pressure for people to actually come need to fight you. You can run these great weapons, you can run them hand weapon shield. I've been experimenting with a bit of both. I haven't got a answer of which is better. Like, yeah, it's matchup dependent, and what the average is, I'm not sure on which one would be best and which one would be worst. But there you have it, an interesting army, one of the bigger armies, and yeah, uh, fights in a different way to pretty much everyone else. But yeah, no, I really like the undead, and they are different, and I think they're in a pretty good place at the moment. Well, please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the rank ladder.